Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new around here, hi, my name is Sarah and I own a brand called My Keeper, which used to be a made-to-order brand and a rental brand, but these days is mostly sewing patterns and floral activewear. Today I'm going to be talking you guys through how to make my brand new sewing pattern, the Johnny jacket. I'm actually wearing a hacked version of it right now. So I made this version here out of 3 men's shirts that I got from the op shop, as well as a duvet inner, which I managed to score from the op shop as well. So I was pretty stoked with that. So I'm going to show you a couple of the different samples that I've made leading up to this video so you can get an idea of the type of version that you would like to make. This was my very first sample of the pattern that I made. It's in this thick sort of woolen blanket kind of fabric, and I chose not to use the wadding with this one. The fabric was thick enough as it was, so a couple of testers did use thicker fabric and tried to line it with the wadding, and yeah, it was a bit of a disaster on the sewing machine. Way too thick for the needles. So just a heads up on that, if you do have a thicker fabric, you do not need the wadding. So I was pretty happy with this first sample, but I did find that I made the collar band a little bit too high. Like when I zip it all the way up, it's like at my nose, but it looks really cute sort of across the shoulders, like it is just there. So that is my very first sample, and it is cropped. I don't know if I said that previously. My next sample was this one here. So this is also a cropped version of the jacket. For this one I used a cotton lawn and I used a bamboo wadding, which was 250 GSM I believe, and I think it works really well with this. So this cotton lawn is from Spoonflower, and it's got this like very slight feeling of being waterproof, even though I know it's not, but I can't describe it. It's got like a little sheen over the top, and I actually really love it for the Johnny jacket. A couple of things about this one is I did not add any wadding to the collar band, so you can see it's reasonably floppy, but I think it actually still works really well. But yeah, wadding everywhere else and no wadding there. What I like about this jacket is I actually ran out of the yellow fabric because it was quite a small width. So I actually lined it with this blue, which I think looks super cute, and it made me realize that actually this jacket, if you got the right zips, so you can get reversible zips, you could actually make it a completely reversible jacket quite easily. So yeah, something to think about. There's this one here. This one was made in the long length of the jacket, so the long length sits just below the hip, and I added wadding to one layer of the collar band for this one, and so it sits up quite nice and straight by itself, which is good. But it also, with the wadding that I used, which was the same one from the previous jacket, the 250 GSM, it also still looks really good, sort of flattened across the shoulders like the other ones too. So I think I'm actually pro wadding in the neckband. But yeah, I was super stoked with this. I am actually thinking about gifting it to my sister though, because I just feel like the colors suit her a little bit more. But I was really happy with it because I really like the little sort of cord that I chose for it. I think it suits the fabric perfectly. So that one there, long. Now let me hold them both beside each other to give you a bit of a gauge on the length differences. Last Johnny I'm going to share with you guys today is my original Johnny jacket. So I made this quite a few years back, probably about 3 or 4, when I used to do made to order, and I designed the fabric, and I think it suits the Johnny jacket so much. I really adore this one. It's lined with woolen wadding, which means it's super cozy. It doesn't have any wadding in the neck, and yeah, I just think overall this is probably my favorite Johnny that I think I've ever made. Although I do have quite high hopes for this one we're going to be making today in the tutorials. Hopefully seeing my collection of Johnny samples has helped you to decide what kind of Johnny you'd like to make, and I think we'll get into the tutorial now. Let's get started. The first step is to quilt your fabric. Now this is an optional step, particularly if you've got super thick fabric. I would suggest skipping this, but if you're using a lightweight cotton like I am, then I would definitely suggest quilting it if you're wanting that kind of bomber look. I cut the exact same pieces out of my wadding as I did with my main pieces, and to attach them you can actually use basting spray, but I'm actually just going to use pins to pin them in place and then do the quilting over the top like so. Unfortunately, my camera battery died when I was doing this on my official jacket, so you're just going to have to make do with this little mock version here. Please ignore the fact that I've already cut the central part. I have indicated the zip side of the jacket and the side of the jacket just to help orientate you guys. I have sewn my welt down, and I've made sure I've stopped at either end in line with that little pink marking. I'm popping my small pocket piece on top of the welt, and I am going to pin this in place in line with that rectangle as well, so that I stop sewing there. Getting my large pocket piece and lining that one up as well, and same with the small pocket. I am going to be pinning at the end of that rectangle, and that is my stop sewing indicator. Stitch in place in between where those pins are and make sure you backstitch. Next, we are going to cut the middle piece open. Haha at me pretending to be cutting this open because I'd already cut it earlier, but make sure that you clip at 45-degree angles at about 2 centimeters before the end. This should leave you with 2 little triangle flaps at either end of the rectangle. Next up, we are going to push all of our pocket pieces through that gap, as well as the welt, and then the little triangle pieces at the end. I often like to iron as I go, just to make sure that everything's nice and clean and tidy, but this is definitely an optional step. But yeah, I just think it makes it slightly easier to sew everything together when everything's nice and pressed. Now, the order that you push these items through is really important, so make sure you go pocket, and then welt, and then the triangles are the very last thing to be pushed through. So here's a little close-up of what it should be looking like. So you've got your 2 pocket pieces, and then you've got your welt, and then you've got the little triangle piece. So it's like a little sandwich. So we've got triangle piece, welt, pocket, all in one little layer. Now we're going to start pinning all the way around the pocket. Now the important piece here is to make sure that you pin and sew as close to the bottom of that triangle as possible. Sometimes I use a zipper foot to do this part so that I can get really, really close to that edge there. And we're going to sew all the way around, starting from one triangle and then working our way around the pocket and then up to that other triangle. Next step is to place right sides together, and we are pinning along the shoulder edges. Now all of these steps from this point forward are done to both the lining and the main pieces. Next up, we are going to attach our sleeves. Now there should have been a notch to indicate the central point of the sleeves, so hopefully you've got that clipped, and you're just going to align that with the shoulder seam, and then pin all the way along, making sure that it's fitting evenly. After stitching all of that in place, I have pressed all of the seams open. This is really important because this jacket has a lot of bulk. It's got lots of layers, and we do not want to have any broken needles. And then basically I'm just matching up at the armpit seam and sewing from the bottom all the way to the wrist, pivoting at the armpit. I am just marking my buttonholes here. I forgot to mark them from the actual pattern pieces, so I'm just measuring them out where they should be going, and then I am going to execute my beautiful buttonholes luckily for me, I have got an automatic buttonhole foot, which is an absolute dream. But yeah, every machine's different when it comes to buttonholes, so just look up how to do it with your particular machine. You can use eyelets here, alternatively, which gives it a slightly edgier look. So yeah, whatever floats your boat at this point. Next up, we're going to be attaching our collar band to our neck. Now, it's really important that you make sure that the more curved side of the neckband is facing downwards. I think I've actually marked it on the pattern now to avoid any confusion, but line up that central point and then the very edges, and then just sort of ease it around with a few more pins. And just a quick reminder that we are attaching the one with the buttonholes to the outer shell of the jacket, not the lining. Then we're just going to repeat that exact same step with the lining. So it should be looking something like this. I have pressed those seams open, and now what I'm going to do is put right sides together and stitch them along the top edge at a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance. Now, if you are somebody who is wanting a shorter collar, this is the time to do it. You can trim it off, you can sew it at a bigger seam allowance, whatever floats your boat, but just be mindful that you may need to adjust the zip size if that's something that you're wanting to do. Now it is time for the zip. I have actually opened my zip up and I am lining it up with that seam at the top there. It's got a little sort of plastic nodule at the top of the zip. I don't know what the exact terminology is, but I'm lining that up with that seam that we've just sewn, and then I'm making sure that any seams that there are that I go past, that I keep them flat to avoid any bulk. And just a reminder for anyone that's a slightly newer sewist that we have got the non-zipper edge facing the raw edge of the jacket. Now I am flipping the jacket so that right sides can face, and we're going to sew along the hemline. Now the important part here is to make sure that the side seams of the lining and the side seams of the main are matching. So I always do those first and then I pin the rest of the way afterwards. Sometimes I also put one in the central point as well, just so that it's all nice and even. Then we are going to stitch along that edge. Now pull it right sides out, and I always like to press every single one of my seams after I've finished them, and this one is no different. So give that a really good press and let's get on to the next step. Then what we want to do is put the lining arms into the main arms, making sure that there is no twisting at all and that all the seams line up perfectly. Next up, I am folding the main and the lining down by 1 centimeter at each of the wrists. Now you can pre-press this if you want to make it slightly easier, but I am raw dogging it here, which is a little bit embarrassing, but hey, what can you do? I've got them pinched between my left hand here, and I'm pulling it through that hole in the lining, and I am just going to transfer to my right hand here and then pin all the way around the wrist. Now it occurred to me after doing all of the illustrations and this video that the jacket is still in fact open at the zipper's edge. So I feel like probably we don't need the hole in the lining, but I don't know. You have a go and let me know. I have written the instructions like this, so we are rolling with it. But yeah, if that makes it easier, I would definitely do that instead of hand stitching up the hole in the lining. Now that we have sewn both of those sleeves closed and given them a good press, we are going to push the lining back by 1 centimeter and start lining it up with the zipper edge. Now, this is also significantly easier if you press it beforehand. So what is that saying? Do as I say, not as I do. Something like that. But yeah, definitely give it a press before you go ahead and do this. Make sure that we're lining up all of the seams. So for example, this one here at the bottom of the collar band, making sure that the lining seam is matching up with the outer seam, and then we're just going to work our way down to the bottom. Now, just a reminder to leave that small gap of about 4.5 centimeters at the end of either side of the zip. This is going to be for putting our elastic in later on. Now, this might be a slightly unconventional method, I'm not going to lie. For those of you who have been following me for quite some time, I am a self-taught sewist, so sometimes the way that I do things can be a little bit rogue, but hey, it all comes together in the end, and that is what counts. Oh boy, I am such a rookie YouTuber. I literally was not recording while I was sewing the zip with the lining, and I also wasn't recording when I was sewing the channels for the waistband and the wrists, but I'm hoping that those are easy enough to follow in the paper instructions. Here I am feeding my elastic through the channel that I sewed. Now I've got a safety pin attached to my elastic, and I'm just using a bit of a push-push-pull method to feed it all the way through to the other end. Now, once I reach the other end, I am going to close off each of the openings by finishing that line of stitching, which I did when I stitched the lining to the zip. And then I'm going to follow the exact same process with the wrists. So I'm feeding the elastic through that little gap that we left earlier on in the piece, and then when I reach the other side, this time I'm going to overlap the elastic and secure with a zigzag and then close off that hole. And we are officially on the home straight. I cannot wait to show you what this journey looks like on. I think it has to be my favorite so far. I hope that yours is looking really good too, and I cannot wait to see your versions. Let's see my final result. And that's a wrap on this tutorial. Thank you so much for being here. If you haven't subscribed, please make sure you do so. I am trying really hard to upload more regularly this year on my YouTube channel. If you end up making the Johnny jacket, please make sure you tag at MyKeeperNZ on TikTok and Instagram. I would love to see your makes, and I hope that this tutorial has been a helpful sew along for you. Thanks so much for being here. See you next time. Bye.